Deep. Deeper. Yet deeper. In this world, there is always a bigger fish, and appropriately, a bigger space for it to inhabit. The only way to find such places is to go deeper. Deeper into curiosity. Deeper into hubris. Deeper into the depths of creation. And what you may find are the ones who are able to thrive in the depths. Those murky dimensions and stilled spaces. Those who lurk in the calm, dark abyss at the bottom of everything. And once you find them, it will only be too late. As you struggle against the void, you may find that every path you take just brings you deeper, deeper, yet deeper.
The Void. An infinite dark abyss, home to extraterrestrial crustaceans and untold eldritch abominations. With the release of the Survivors of the Void DLC, I'd hope to learn a better understanding of the inner machinations of this unknown world. But from what we've seen, from what we've learned, the answers to our questions open up even more to be discovered. So sit back and enjoy, and join me as I take you deeper, deeper, yet deeper, into the realm of the Void. The Void exists within another dimension other than our own, and is described as being located at the end of time. It is unclear what this truly means, but it could be theorized that the Void exists towards our extremely distant future. A future where everything is empty and dark, filled with nothing but dying stars and swirling black holes, located right before the inevitable heat death of the universe. The Void is filled with a substance dubbed as void fog. Not much is known about this void fog, but we do know that it suffocates all organic life and transforms the surrounding areas into the Void's own twisted form of nature. We know that the beings of this Void either require this fog to live or have somehow managed to evolve to be able to survive within it. This fog also keeps the portals to the Void stable, along with keeping the cells and the cradles within them stable as well.
I just saw a portal and I just decided to step through. Why? Because I'm a moron, that's why. The fog keeps it stable. The cells and the joints, the cradles, they like the fog. I've tried choking them to stop the fog, but they last a while. A lot longer than I'd survive in the fog. A couple hours maybe. The cradle goo is sustainable. I feed it, and in return it gives me food. Tastes like clam chowder. Sorta. Anyways, where do I go from here?
The Void contains many different areas known as cells, which are each assigned a different number. However, we only have 3 locations within the Void to gather information from. The planetarium is labelled as Cell V, or Cell 5, and the place known as the Void Locus is Cell III, etc., just a very large number. The Void Fields does not have a number within its description, instead being assigned the name Cosmic Prison, though it is most likely there is a cell number assigned to it that we just don't have access to. This is not to be confused with the cells located within the Void Fields. These particular cells within the fields act more of a concentrated storage unit, and are made up from the many different beings and relics who were taken from our dimension and condensed into void juice and solidified into gems. The planetarium requires the activation of deep void signals to be able to reach it, and the portal that appears is known as the Deep Void Portal. Seeing that the Void Locus's cell number is considerably higher than the planetarium's, this could imply that the lower the number that a cell has, the deeper within the void it is located, through increasing density of void fog. As we do not have the void field's cell number, it is unknown how deep within the void it is located, but I would assume it is relatively close to the surface, as you can clearly see void fogs far below the map, and you are also able to easily take portals back to our dimension. Seeing that the planetarium is only Cell 5, it could very well mean that there are more places that exist even deeper within the void, and what we may find down there may be even more powerful than any other beings we have encountered thus far.
Life finds a way. Even in the depths of creation, there's bound to be something crawling along the sand, just hoping to make it through the day.
Before the release of the DLC, we didn't really know much about the purpose of this unknown dimension. We theorized that they may be on the side of good, capturing dangerous entities like that of interdimensional police, but that is ultimately not the case. A common theory is that if the void does actually exist at the end of time, then potentially the true motivation of the void is to try to add entropy back into this dying universe, stealing and capturing different planets and powerful beings, desperately trying to find ways to prolong reaching the inevitable heat death of their dimension. This adds an interesting dynamic to the void, as despite their cruel methods of capture, it would ultimately be for a good cause in their eyes. Unfortunately, it seems like the main purpose of the void is to capture these beings and relics so that they would be used as weapons by creatures of the void, to make their forces stronger and to eventually take over our universe. And deeper down into the darkness, within the darkest depths of the void, we find the strongest being of them all, a being known as the Voidling, the diviner of the deep. A giant, seemingly mechanical crab or spider-like being that somehow manifested within this extremely harsh environment. It is unknown how the Voidling was created or born, but knowing how deadly the void can be, we can only theorize about the immense power that this being possesses. From reading many logs about the void's inhabitants, we know that they are capable of mind-controlling their victims, paralyzing or nullifying the beings they wish to capture. It is possible that originally the Voidling would personally enter our dimension to collect powerful items before becoming powerful enough to use other beings to complete its bidding. The Voidling log mentions a group of people coming into contact with the Voidling. They attempted to escape its paralysis, but by the time the Voidling finally disappeared, and the survivors were free from the Voidling's grasp, they were left to die, starving and freezing to death.
We almost got rid of it. It was too massive, with too much weight. It took up too much room and was too dangerous. We tried to massage it into its surroundings. We felt we had captured its essence well enough, but its words beat into our minds, and we weren't allowed to realize that it had been keeping us here. We had begun spending our days staring at it, until it became formless to us. Whispers of meaning with no words travelled through our ears, and strung us up like a necklace of fools. Totally mesmerized, we sat around it like a campfire as it cultivated each of us with its cold embrace. One by one we were scanned, and we were made to present all we had with us. Feathers from local species, masks from strange spirits, abandoned metal scraps and rusty old equipment. It examined each individually, its iris flexing mechanically as it traced the silhouette of every artifact. For a moment I snapped out of it. I felt fear. I wanted to scream out, to raise my weapon, but my body was wholly resistant. Suddenly, the others all turned their heads to face me from across the circle, their eyes wide and faces expressionless. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, and my neck stiffened. After its final scan, it vibrated out of existence, its atoms disseminating into the air. We were left frozen husks around a campfire long since turned to ash. We almost got rid of it.
It is highly probable that deeper within the void, there exists forces stronger than even the Voidling. The name Voidling could even imply that this being is only a child, or at least a lesser being compared to whatever lies hidden even further within the depths. From reading other logs within the void, we can see that even just exposure to the void can begin to corrupt you. The Void Barnacle log translates the background radiation found within this dimension, showing you how the power of the void itself can whisper to you and comfort you. It manipulates you, while the void overtakes your mind and transforms your body.
Traveling through the void is simple and safe with this easy process. First things first, enable your engine. Wait approximately 34 cycles until it produces a field. This will allow you to cross the planes. When calibrating your engine, set your target to null. Do not worry about any turbulence you experience while crossing the planes. Do not worry about flashing lights. Do not worry about any creatures you may feel have boarded your vessel. All is safe and secure. Once you access the void, please sit back and relax. The void is a safe and secure environment. Agents will be deployed to escort you to your cell. Do not resist. Our agents are here for your safety. Do not worry about any of our premier fauna you see in the distance. Do not worry about the infinite sky. And do not worry about any panic attacks you have while attempting to perceive it. Do not worry about the barnacles growing on the hull of your vessel. Do not worry, we are here for you.
There are many other beings we can find within the void, such as the Void Reavers, who enter our dimension to collect the various items and beings for the Voidling. These beings are even capable of reading through and stealing memories from their victims, as even information is power.
I saw something last night on my post. A giant crab. It came out of thin air and started tapping along the perimeter with one of its forelegs, like it was checking for an opening. It'd check a few meters at a time, and then disappear, again and again. So I figured out its pattern. I waited for it, where it would appear next. My rifle was aimed at empty space, and then suddenly that empty space became a target. But I couldn't pull the trigger. It turned to look straight at me, and I was paralyzed. It wasn't fear, it was something else. It was talking into my brain. The words it used weren't any language I knew, but it compelled me to freeze. The experience wasn't something I can fully describe with words. I couldn't pull the trigger, I couldn't even reach for the radio, I couldn't look away. While my head was ringing, it resumed its routine. I could only stand and watch. It finished its check, and then it returned its attention to me, as though I was just an afterthought. I could feel it take something from me, but I can't remember what it was. And then it left. My guess is it got whatever it wanted, because it hasn't been back since. Something is still wrong with my head. I can't even seem to work up the power to speak. Should I even tell anyone? Is knowing somehow worse? And what about all those times I heard that same sound, before I even came to this awful place?
These Reavers would take the captured entities and break them down into some form of juice and cure them into gems, before being stored within the many cells found within the void. The cells were for dangerous creatures. The cells were for rare, powerful relics of exponential strength. The cells were for ancient automata of war. The cells were for scientists and inventors and explorers. The cells were for gods. The cells were for everything. The Voidling employs other beings to help capture entities, such as the Void Devastators, or as their title states, the Destroyer of Worlds. These colossal beings are implied to be capable of capturing entire planets and other celestial bodies with their implosions, and could have potentially aided the Void in capturing the moon at the end of Risk of Rain 2. Though it is just as likely that it was the Voidling who captured it instead, potentially appearing through the portal we can find by the glass frog, though this is more likely just an Easter egg and not actually canon. We can also find giant whales swimming through the darkness, ferrying planets and other artifacts to the appropriate cells found deep within the void. These whales are capable of diving all the way down to the planetarium, carrying the void gems within themselves before resurfacing again with relative ease, a feat that many who are unfamiliar with the void would find very difficult and confusing. I see things come and go, ferried by giant beasts. When they swim close, I can see inside. I've seen creatures and weapons and ships, ferried from the dark end to the light. Seen planets and moons too. I'm not sure where they're taking it all. I swear I saw a chef bot once. All these beings serve the Voidling, but it's unknown if they are doing this out of their own free will, or potentially from the Voidling's mind control. There exists cut content from the DLC, which showcased a cutscene that would play right after the Voidling's defeat. This cutscene showed how, upon the Voidling's death, all of the Reavers would be shut down, implying that they have no free will and exist only as constructs of the Voidling. But due to this being cut content and not in the final release, I will personally not be considering this canon to the story, but you can believe whatever you want. Most planets within the planetarium are not transformed into gems, which might be due to their large size, but it can be theorized that the Voidling is trying to recreate its own mini solar system to increase entropy back into this universe. But one planet managed to fight off the Void's invasion. Petrichor 5 is a paradise home to many powerful and destructive beings, so it only makes sense that the Voidling would want to capture it. But as the Voidling sent out its many servants to capture Petrichor 5, Providence managed to fight them off, as learned through the bottled Chaos log. The one planet they couldn't take. They had everything locked away in their cells. Beasts, artifacts of power, gods, memories. And yet, no matter how many agents they sent, none returned victorious, if they even returned at all. The lucky ones who did survive fled, nervously whispering of a crystalline blade stained with chaos. Mithrix is supposedly able to fight off the Void beings as well, as only upon his death does the Void begin to capture the moon, though the Void had to act fast due to Mithrix setting off the moon's detonation. Any earlier and they would be killed, and any later the moon would be destroyed. From what we know about the Imps, the mere presence of Providence somehow prevented them from being able to return to their dimension, and were therefore trapped upon the planet. On the Sky Meadows map, a family event can trigger that allows Mithrix to send down his lunar chimeras to fight you instead of the usual inhabitants. The message reads,
Warning, the bulwark begins to falter.
Providence's title is Bulwark of the Weak, meaning that it must relate to Providence in some way. There is no evidence for this, but a personal theory of mine is that the force that the brothers possess, which prevent interdimensional beings from invading the planet, is still somewhat in effect, although it is vastly more weakened and is slowly failing since Providence is dead. This would explain why the Voidling is still unable to capture Petrichor 5 in a single implosion, such as what they did to the moon. The Voidling is not one to give up, however, and desperately wants to capture this planet filled with potential powerful weapons. So instead, the Voidling uses Void Seeds, which produce the same fog found within the Void, in an attempt to bring the Void to the planet, rather than the planet to the Void. The Void deploys cradles containing what is known as a Void Infester to aid in the transformation process. These little parasites latch onto organic materials, infecting creatures with Void energy, driving them mad, and causing them to lash out at their allies. If the host is killed, the parasite will simply fall off, seeking another creature to infect and repeat the process. While not much is known about the infecting process, it is highly probable that the Void Infestors aid in corrupting objects into the Void versions of themselves, transforming the object's properties into powerful Void weaponry. The final creature to talk about are the Void Jailers. These jailers aid in capturing powerful beings if they are too strong for a simple Reaver to nullify, potentially using lethal force to capture their targets by any means necessary. Even if you manage to fight off these jailers, their implosions will follow the target as a last-ditch attempt to void them. These jailers are also used as guards, patrolling outside the cells of something called the Simulacrum. The Void takes the beings they capture and puts them within a simulation, running them through endless tests against increasingly difficult situations. The purpose of the Simulacrum is to gather as much information as they can about their subjects, while also using them to plan their next location to invade, calculating for every single possibility and planning around it to ensure a swift planetary capture. The Simulacrum is also used to make the subjects more powerful, slowly infecting them with Void and turning them into weapons for the Voidling's arsenal. Whenever the player dies to a Void implosion, the following message is displayed.
You have been detained. Await your sentence at the end of time.
Your sentence, meaning that you get placed within the Simulacrum and forced to live through these trials to determine how useful you can be to the Void. There is a common theory that the Simulacrum can only recreate things that the Void have managed to detain, but it's possible that they're also able to use stolen memories to simulate places or beings that they have not physically captured. The Void was unable to fully replicate Petrichor, however, since it struggled to gather information thanks to Providence intervening. Using anything they could find, the Simulacrum attempted to replicate parts of the planet, but it ended up fractured and broken. It's not clear if the beings within the Simulacrum are even real, for even death cannot free them from this endless nightmare. The subjects wake up upon death to repeat a new scenario for them to act out, for the Void's insatiable hunger for knowledge, repeating the trials for what feels like an eternity as the Void patiently waits for their prisoners' minds to crack and fully succumb to the Void. But what happens when someone's mind doesn't fully break? A commando was captured by the Void many years ago, not the legendary survivor who slayed Providence, but a simple commando like any other. They were left to fester in the Simulacrum, doing as the simulation bids, getting stronger and stronger. So much time had passed, but they were never truly overtaken by the Void. They began to disassociate with the simulation, beginning to hear the guards patrolling outside their cell, and no longer being able to feel the simulated hunger or thirst. The Void eventually loses interest, while this commando fights through endless hordes of enemies, while their body is slowly transformed by the Void, their armor and weapons fusing to their body, and transforming into the Void Fiend, slowly turning mad as they struggle to hold their mind back from the threshold of complete Void domination. It's not clear how, but the Void Fiend rattles the walls of this simulated reality, breaking free and managing to escape out of the Simulacrum.
Darkness, shrouding darkness, echoes from futures past and past futures, and places and times peeking out between cracks in reality. A suffocating prison of the mind and soul occupied by beasts poking and prodding at your spirit forever. Forever testing you, forever tempting you, iteration after iteration. They've run laps through the brain, crawled every synapse for memories and data, weapons to use against theoretical armies with more resilient hearts and evasive bodies. Chittering and clacking, they could be heard watching from beyond the cell, no longer interested, but still patrolling the grounds. Here, in this purgatory, there is no hunger and no thirst. All that remains are the echoes. How long has it been? Time seems to warp in and out, around breaths circulating within. Darkness all-consuming starts to drown alveoli and flood inky black veins. Memories trespassing into reality as reality fades into the distant past. Silence only broken by the sound of watching eyes. Shake the bars! Twisting and contorting, engulfed in fear and becoming the embodiment. Reborn like some sick prophecy, arms and legs like new corpses on the seabed, no longer suppressed. Hunger, thirst, hope, consume.
The Void Fiend pauses for a moment as they adjust to reality, beginning to feel real hunger and thirst once again. They begin to feel hope that they might have a chance to escape back to Earth, but they don't have the time to enjoy it. The Void Beings panic, as nothing has escaped the Simulacrum before. The forceful resequence of the Void Fiend left the cells unstable and leaking. To prevent any lost data, emergency protocols kick into action. The area gets flooded with void fog, and the cells forcefully release all captured entities trapped within. The cells create bubbles around themselves to act as the only safe haven in the area in order to regroup the escapees back together. It was much easier to recapture beings while they're alive and resequenced, rather than risk losing data due to the void juice leaking from the gems. The survivor known as Acrid was supposedly captured by the Void long ago, and trapped inside these cells, but amidst the chaos of the Void Fiend's escape, Acrid was resequenced and managed to escape the clutches of the Void.
Theoretically, the true contents of the cell were just a mess of atoms. The structure of the contents in each cell, living, weapon, whatever, was categorized, sequenced, and then turned to juice and cured into solid gems, an incredibly efficient and lossless format. And yet, when the cell containment broke, and the emergency protocols resequenced that mess of atoms back into the creature known as Acrid, he already knew. Maybe he was somehow conscious, in his juice gem state. Maybe they injected him with information. Maybe he was connected to their psionic network. Maybe he just made it up. But he knew that the strange crustaceans that scrambled his atoms and imprisoned him here, in a place unknown, were panicking. Something had gone wrong, in a world where variables were not allowed. Something was leaking. They may have finally imprisoned something that could not be contained.
It's not clear what happens to the Void Fiend, or if they even found their way out of the Void. We as players are able to experience what would happen though, if the Void Fiend managed to get back to our dimension, fighting its way through Petrichor all the way to Mithrix, and fleeing from the planet with the rescue ship. The Void desperately trying to recapture its escaped prisoner, along with the moon before it detonates. This sequence of events is probably not considered canon, but we can ponder the possibility of the Void Fiend knowing that it wants to get back to Earth, though not truly remembering why, slipping between sanity and the mindless chaos of the Void. And so it comes, for all of us. Meanwhile, in the Void Fields, the survivors manage to stumble their way into the Void. They come across the damaged cells and manage to stabilize each of them while fighting off hordes of enemies that were being released thanks to the emergency protocols. After stabilizing each of the cells, the emergency protocols are no longer active. The void fog disappears, allowing the survivors to roam around freely, while a void portal opens up, inviting the survivors to explore more of the void, taking them deeper into the depths. The survivors find themselves at a void locus, and are then attacked by void enemies. The survivors activate deep void signals, which opens up a deep void portal, and with no other option, the survivors take the portal, taking them deeper, yet deeper, into the void, all the way down to the planetarium, where they come face to face with the monstrous voidling, which immediately tries to eliminate these intruders. Backed into a corner, the survivors have no choice but to fight the voidling, hoping that if they manage to destroy it, they might finally be able to leave. Chasing the voidling further into the depths, hopping between fractured parts of petrichor that had been captured via the void seeds, reaching fog so thick that even the voidling struggles to keep it away. But finally, after a long and incredulous battle, the voidling falls. Yet another portal appears. Could this be the escape the survivors are looking for? It's not clear where this portal leads, or if we even managed to truly defeat the voidling in the first place. There could be other voidlings, or perhaps some other eldritch beings hidden even further into the depths. But with no other place to go, the only way is to step through, and to go deeper. Deeper into curiosity. Deeper into hubris. Deeper into the depths of the void, leaving nothing but your fates unknown.
I wake up again. The simulacrum continues forever. A million scenarios, a million permutations. It watches, calculating, recording, witnessing. We always die, and we have died millions of times, and every time we are in the simulacrum. We've escaped, once or twice. We defeated it, saw it die, chased it down, through other worlds. We saw it collapse into a black hole. We got out, back to Earth, found a crashed vessel. It was rough, but we've done this scenario a few thousand times. We spent time together, on Venus. We grew close, got married, got old together. We had kids, a boy and a girl. Eric had leukemia. That was hard for us. Madeline? She passed in her sleep. I followed on my own accord. I was satisfied. But then I woke up again. In the simulacrum. It never happened. I was always in the simulacrum. Madeline was from the simulacrum too. I think it liked that. Am I still here?
Thank you so much for watching. I want to clarify before this video ends that the devs have confirmed that the rest of the game does not take place in the simulacrum, and is not all a simulation. The survivors do actually end up crashing onto the planet, and they do end up killing Mithrix in the grand overall story. But once again, this is my interpretation of the law of risk of rain, so it is very possible that I have made some mistakes while making this. If I have made any mistakes, or if you have any questions about the law, please leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like and share this video if you enjoyed it, or if you disliked it, please leave a comment to let me know why. Thank you again very much for watching. I hope to see you all again in a future video.